Hi, everyone. This is your host, Susan Rosen, and today I have a great guest by the name of Kari.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Kari Klein. Sorry, we just had a discussion about names and pronunciations. And Kari has a really interesting background. I'm just going to give a little highlight of it, and then we'll get into it more into it when we get into the podcast. And Kari is a, I don't know, is it you are or you were a chiropractor?
I am a chiropractor,
Okay.
but I am considered a non-practicing chiropractor at this
Got
point.
it. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Non-licensed. Yeah.
I didn't want to misspeak
No,
about that.
Yeah.
But you were
Yes.
a chiropractor for 16 years in the clinical setting.
Yes. Absolutely.
Which is dealing with patients and all of that.
Yeah.
And I have my little cheat sheet here. So, and you have just transitioned out of the clinical practice, I believe.
Yes. This is my first month.
Oh boy, excitement. And you're doing that because you felt a pull to explore and engage in a different view of health, healing, and human capacity from an understanding of principles, melding science and spirituality. I like that. That's very concise and it sounds so exciting.
Oh, it just warms my heart hearing it.
Well, that's good. At least I said it right.
No, it's so good.
Let's see. There's something, and maybe we can talk about this to start off with. I liked your other that sentence that you started this bio with, which is that you are an ever-evolving fusion of knowledge and wonder.
Yes.
And I found that very intriguing. So maybe we can talk about that. And I'll just add that I invited Kari on so that we could look at health and wellness from a different point of view than the traditional, which is what I've been trying to explore in a lot of these interviews. Since my view of health and wellness over the past year and a half has really expanded to an understanding that it's everything in our lives, and it's not just, what's our temperature today, or my back is hurting, or any of that. It's really our whole lives. It's our money, it's our family relations, it's how we feel when we wake up in the morning, it's how we view the world. And our health, our body, our physical health is a part of that, but it's not where it ends. That's not the boundaries of it. It really is everything about our lives. So, but back to your ever-evolving fusion of knowledge and wonder.
Yes. It's amazing when you start to see the through line of your life and what kind of brought you to this moment. And but it's interesting what you just said there, and something I noticed is that you're right. A lot of people can kind of miss. It's innocent. Get miss that your health is part of this whole health and well-being encapsulates everything. But also that your health is actually an extension of your view of reality. And that's why I'm stepping out of clinical practice, because once you're in clinical practice, it's like you're just far enough downstream that it's really difficult to take people to that place of wonderment. Yeah. And so when I say knowledge, I will always be learning. I love learning, and I love knowledge, but you have to have a sense of wonder, because knowledge has a bit of a finite end to it. And then knowledge grows. So it's kind of like what we know is only just the edge of what we currently know. And that's same for every human.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So people say, well, I know. And I'm like, well, you know what you know, but you don't know. Right. Because we don't all know.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I guess that's where it comes from, is that sometimes we get this insatiable need to learn, feeling like that's going to get us what we're looking for. And the curiosity for me was like, well, hold on a second. What if I could learn and have knowledge, and yet have a curiosity that there's actually a deeper knowing, and knowledge is going to continue to grow, but me learning it doesn't, isn't going to be the source of my wholeness. It's an addition to, which is amazing. Same with health, right? Like your health is, there's just distinctions that are different that I'm using, but that I couldn't disentangle in practice. So that's why I had to just kind of shift to say, okay, I'm going to have a different conversation and pull people upstream for them to see their health, their life, their leadership, their passion, their purpose in a different way.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting when you were just talking about that and about knowledge. In some of the Asian traditions, knowledge is that being. It is the where you're living from.
Yeah.
Right. It's not not necessarily the intellectual knowledge.
Yes.
It's the knowledge that you have in your whole body and of your whole body and of your whole life. And I think that I get the feeling that you're kind of pointing at that kind of knowledge, as opposed to, just how many books have you read, right?
Right. And how much smarter, how many, right.
Yeah. I was going to say, and how much of it did you remember, right?
Exactly. I mean, look at our schooling, right?
Yeah.
It's like, how many books do we have? How many? Yeah. I mean, there's intellect, and it's an amazing tool. Like our brains are like fantastic. And I have a neurology bend and interest in when I practiced, certainly, but there is a deep knowing and a wisdom that already resides within us and has come with us through the millennia that is actually unfolding as well, but it gets very little airtime. And so it's interesting to, when you look in that direction, what starts to open up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So since you're coming out of the clinical, which is more kind of, I don't know, hands-on. I mean, I don't know how else to kind of describe it. It's as opposed to that. I don't know. I'm thinking of the whole person, but it wasn't that you weren't dealing with the whole person already. There's just a different feel to it, I guess.
Yeah. I would say what I notice is that chiropractic as a discipline, I mean, I'm not going to get into the whole philosophy of it, but that's what drew me in. The philosophy of chiropractic really aligns with human physiology, which is what sparked my, okay, I'm going to head there instead of medicine. But if you were to look at it as a discipline, we're really used to things becoming specialties. And so then you become an expert in an area. Right. And so you can be a little bit siloed. Now, chiropractors tend to be less siloed because we do look at the whole, right? We get that the experience of back pain isn't coming from just the injury to the back. It's also a lot of other things that are going on. Or if someone has a knee issue, it could be coming from their hip. Like it's just not the knee. So we are a little bit more big picture in that view. But what I would say feels the biggest difference is going from, the expert where someone's looking for information and for advice as I've gone from an advisor role, because I would give advice, but I started to see how little difference the advice made.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
Okay.
And so I thought, wait a sec, I went in this for a big impact. And then I started to say, okay, well, if the nervous system is running the show, because it is, physiologically running
Mhm.
the show. Hold on, what's informing the nervous system? And I started to see what it is. It's your view of reality.
Mm.
And what I started to see is that people's views of reality weren't grounded in principles or truth.
Mhm.
It just wasn't grounded because we get trained into it being outside of us. And it's just not out there.
Yeah.
Right. So you do look to an advisor, right? If something's wrong with you, like if you inherently think there's something wrong with you, you're going to go to an advisor.
Yeah.
And I don't want people to hear me in discounting that you would do that. Like if I
Mm.
had a knee issue, I would go
Mhm.
get it
Mhm.
checked. But that's a small subset of what is my view of me in the world and interaction,
Mm.
and how am I informing my system? What is my relationship to the problem? Most
Mhm.
of my patients, I couldn't pull them away from the relationship of their problem because no, like that was the problem. And I'm like, and it was hard to pull them upstream of it.
Yeah, I can see how that would be. I can see how
Mm.
that would be, because we as human beings don't like to deal with things that aren't concrete and black and white, and
Mhm.
so it's kind of like, yeah, my knee's bothering me, it must be something wrong with my knee.
Right.
It could be my hip, that I can see
Right.
because they're connected, but
Right.
my
Mm.
mind, it's a little
Yeah.
harder. My inner wisdom, I'm not,
Yeah.
you got,
Yeah.
that's scary. It's almost scary
Yeah.
because it's like, I don't know what to do with all that
Right.
other stuff. I know,
Exactly.
you can give me something, you can give me exercises, you can give me whatever, right?
Hmm. I can
For
give you an
those.
ointment. I can do an adjustment.
Thank you.
You can get
Yeah.
medication, right? And it addresses the knee, which
Yeah.
I'm not saying there's not an importance there, because
Oh, no.
people need to be mobile and they need to
Oh, yeah.
walk.
Yeah.
But there were times where, well, it got to the place where when I saw patients, they honestly would be like, well, you'll find it, because like the complaint itself was downstream
Okay.
of something else. And so looking to
Yeah.
that was always interesting. And they did start to trust me in that way, that there was a little bit of upstreamness, even in their physiology, even if that's the only place I could take them.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of times people with low back, and they just be like, why are you looking at my occiput, the base? And I'm like, because that plays to your function. So it's interesting,
Uh-huh.
right? But
Uh-huh.
what started to happen, as much as I was able to expand things, is that at the very end of the whatever conversation we were having, any freedom someone saw or a new glimmer into something new, they'd be like, okay, but you're going to adjust my back, right? And I'm like, yeah. Oh, I think you just missed all the other stuff. So it just started to feel like, oh darn, right? Like, oh darn, like we got you upstream and then you just like zipped out the river. So that was a little piece of the pull of why it's like, okay, well, I think I need to experiment in a different way.
Yeah.
And to speak to why people find it confusing is because our minds are designed to be thinking.
Mhm.
And where this wisdom or our innate
Mhm.
intelligence, innate health is coming from does not reside in your thinking.
No.
It's actually outside of it.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how could your mind ever wrap its head around it? It can't. So that's when people are like, I just can't figure this out. And I go, because that's not the tool we're going to use. And they're like, oh. And then they don't even know where to go, right? But
Yeah.
it's you can get people there and they can sense it. It's pretty cool. And I know that you are in this work too. So you know that deeper feeling, right? You know
Uh-huh.
that deeper sense
Oh,
of
yeah.
well-being, and it's a wellspring there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm.
And it's yeah, it is kind of interesting, and I just lost my thought. Well, it'll come back.
Yeah. They always do.
I know. Or if it's not important, it won't.
It won't. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. But I can see how once you start expanding to other things
Mhm.
and trying to connect and tell other people about that,
Mhm.
point them towards that,
Mhm.
that could after a while start to be a little frustrating, maybe. I hate to make it sound, so negative,
Mhm.
but it's just It's just kind of like, okay, well, but this is what I want to do, right? This is what I'm seeing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I couldn't bring the full expression of me to it anymore.
yeah.
That's what I kind of felt like was happening,
Uh-huh.
is that, and I had an art form that I had crafted, and, you know, all the patients said, my gosh, you were the best chiropractor I ever went to. And it was so heartwarming. And I'm like, that is wonderful. However, I can't bring the full expression of me to the impact I'm wanting to have. And what, maybe this is something you've experienced, is that what I started to see is that no matter what advice and good things you bring to practice, is that if people don't have their bearings, all the best advice doesn't make a difference. It'll make a slight difference, but it'll be transient at best. And that's why I see people in these, I could see them, they were in these cycles, like, okay, oh, I got the knee fixed, okay. And then they would go do that, oh my gosh, now it's my back. Like, you could just see the cycle. And I was like, wow, this is tough, because this feels very real.
Yeah.
And when I would pull people out of that view of it and saying, really, there's something in outside of your knowledge base, outside of your current knowing of yourself, that is actually going to make the bigger difference. Some people heard it, some people didn't. So but you know, some people have happily come along the journey with me and been delighted. And there's others that are like, Kari, I don't get you. I don't know what's going on over there. And they're just not ready. And that's okay. Like, I'm okay with both.
Yeah. Oh, no, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Because it's just, when you were just saying about that, what came to mind was that, you know, people are out of balance. Right. And that's why you can fix their knee and then it pops out somewhere else.
Sure.
And then you fix that and it pops out somewhere else. And it's just because the whole body and mind is just out of balance.
Totally.
And
it's a bit of a game of whack-a-mole.
Yeah, exactly.
At people's health, like, I see the intakes, and here's the interesting thing. I see the intakes and see how exhausted they are in all the things that they're trying to do with valiant efforts. And I would have so much compassion and empathy, because it's exhausting when your health starts to take a turn.
Yes.
But the game of whack-a-mole is itself exhausting. And it's like, I just wanted people to just like ease into their own, what was right with them to start. And if I could get them to look in that direction, it did start to look a little less daunting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, the whack-a-mole game is, it's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It takes a lot of energy.
Totally does. And it pulls you away from what's innately already perfect with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and not to say you're not going to do some of the things, right? This doesn't take away the doing, but it gives you a new frame to see it in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not like it's necessarily the magic wand.
No.
That you just touch it and everything goes away. You know, I mean, we're still a physical body.
Totally. You know, under gravitational forces, under an environment, and eating food, like, there's all of that plays in, right? Like, that plays in.
That's right.
But when you're only focused there, it's an unending game that actually won't produce the results you're actually looking for.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. And yet the thing that comes to mind as well is that once we can see where that balance is, and how all these things kind of go together, then it actually starts to turn so that our focus does become even more so of, oh, well, what am I putting in my body? Oh, what am I eating? Oh, what am I doing? Am I sleeping? I mean, all these other things start to come more into the picture, and people can start actually seeing them, and how it's all a big puzzle that just kind of all goes together.
Yeah. I always feel like it feels like the puzzle you're so desperately trying to put together, you just can't find those pieces. All of a sudden you look in a new direction and the pieces just kind of float out of the air and they go, and you're like, oh, that's what it's supposed to look like. And I would say that that's the feeling most people have, is that they get this view and then they go, well, holy smokes. Like now it's not, I need to motivate myself. Now it's like, why wouldn't I do that?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I feel compelled to drink more water versus
Yeah.
I should drink more water, which has all these like feelings of shame and yuck, like there's a lot of heaviness to them. But
Mhm.
when you see something new for yourself, it just
Mhm.
feels like self-evident and obvious. So why would you need anyone to advise you? You would just go, oh,
Yeah.
I should drink
No,
water.
that's that's I
Speaking of,
I started, yeah, really. I started on my health journey
mm,
um many years ago.
mhm,
Um 1989,
mm,
88, I don't remember. Um when I just felt like shit. I mean, I literally had no energy. My brain wasn't working. I mean, just really bad. Um, and I ended up going to an allergist just
mhm,
because my family has a lot of allergies. So that's always the first place I go.
mhm,
And it turned out that I had a lot of, um, I don't know, now they might call it food sensitivities, a combination of food sensitivities and food allergies.
mhm, mhm,
And so I ended up with this very long list of things that I couldn't eat,
mhm.
some of which are still on the list.
Right.
But, the whole with dairy, cows, anything from a
Mhm,
cow,
mhm,
um, wheat, and just, we don't need to go into the whole list. But
mhm,
point being is that um, I found it very easy to stay away from all of them
mhm,
because I felt so bad when I ate them.
mhm.
Right. So it's kind of one of the kind of like what you're talking about. Right. It's like I had been eating them all.
Yeah.
And it would have been very easy. And I do even now, every once in a while, I'll cheat a little bit. Right. I'll
Mhm,
have a little bit of dairy cheese. I still can't do
mhm,
milk itself, but excuse me. And occasionally I'll have some wheat.
mhm.
Um, but 99% of the time, I don't go anywhere near any of it.
Yeah.
Um, but it's because I know how much it just throws my whole system off,
Yeah.
brain included. Um, and so that's kind of it's kind of the same kind of thing, because
Yeah.
everyone is always like, oh, but it's so hard to stay. It's like, no, it's not hard to stay away from it. If you can't keep your eyes open when you eat it, it's very easy to stay away from it.
Yeah. Well, and the analogy is like if you knew it was you poking yourself in the eyeball with a pen, you would stop doing it. But what most
You
people
would
don't
hope.
know is they think it's coming from somewhere else. So they keep
Yeah.
poking themselves in the eyeball because until you know it's you,
Yeah.
it's hard.
Yeah.
There's like that, the obviousness. And honestly, like anytime someone gets a new view of something, like you did, you got that
Uh-huh.
view and you got
Yeah.
that experience and you went,
Mhm.
it's like the V8 thing. Like you go, oh my
Yeah.
gosh. And now it's just self-evident. People go, oh my gosh, you're so strong. Wow, you're so good that you can do
Right.
that. You're like, no, I just get what's going on. Like I just have a new understanding. And
Yeah.
understanding is everything. Once you have the
Yeah.
understanding, the steps are easy. But what you and I would point to is that most people don't have a good understanding, and
Mm.
not in a judgment way, just when you
Mm-mm.
don't have where life is actually coming from,
Right.
like this experience of this inside out experience, it really feels like you have to manage out there and that
Yeah.
I have to do it all. And that it becomes very eye heavy, and that's exhausting.
Yeah.
And I hit burnout. So that's where mine was just like, boom, I've got to look at this a different way. How can I be a healthcare practitioner and experience burnout? Like that makes zero sense.
But it's not unusual.
It is so common, but it is not natural.
Yeah.
It's not natural. But
No.
we're talking about it like it
No.
is. And I'm like, no, it's just common.
Yeah.
We're operating from the wrong principles. And so then when I got it, I was like, oh, right. Yeah. So it was one of those. But the cool thing is when you see it, then it's not like exhausting to try and change it. It's like instantly, it's a different experience for you.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah.
A time and effort thing. It's kind of fun.
Yeah. It's yeah, and it can be a moment to moment, right? I mean, it can literally be one moment you don't see it and the next moment you do.
It's happened to me several times.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And you didn't learn. Okay, I got it.
No, but like
I'm
you
just
see something
kidding.
new, right? When you
Yeah.
keep looking in that
Oh, yeah.
direction. So
That's right.
one of my mentors said something really profound to me as I began to kind of lean into this area of work and doing this. And he's like, it's not the fact that people don't want to see it. It's the fact that they just won't look. So as I'm pointing them in the direction,
yeah,
right, they go, oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And I said, it's not an idea. How about you take a look? And there's resistance there. And I'm like, that resistance is what's keeping you where you are. And they're like, what? And I'm like, just look. So he did. It was funny to me. He used the analogy, and I've used it with many clients since. And it's like we're at a party and I've just gone to the bathroom and you've come up to me and said, oh, great. Okay, I don't know this. Where's the bathroom, Kari? And I go, oh, it's down the hall to the right, and just take a turn. And they go, okay, well, how do you know? And I go, well, I was just there and you just asked me. So it's just down the hall to the right. Go look. And they're like, but I don't know if I like really believe that you know. And I'm like, okay, but that's weird. You're asking me where it is. I'm telling you where it is. I'm saying it's down the hall to the right, and you just won't go look. Right. And then eventually they go, oh, fine. So they go down the hall and they're like, oh, hey, there it is. And I'm like, yeah. And it's the craziest thing. And my clients bring it up all the time. They're like, oh yeah, every once in a while they'll be like, oh, right, down the hall to the right. I'll just go look. Because most people are interested, but they actually won't look.
Yeah. And
so then they're still in their brain trying to figure it out. I'm like, it's not there. And they're like, but if it's not there, I'm like, okay, go look here. And they won't. So it's actually a fun game. It starts to be quite light and people can make fun of themselves. So it feels less heavy.
Yeah.
You know, health feels heavy for people, like, oh, I'm bad. Oh my God, I'm not doing it. Right. But like, what if there's just somewhere else to look? And they're like, well, somewhere else to look. And I'm like, well, have you ever played hide and seek? It's kind of fun, right? And they're like, well, yeah, it is it's kind of exciting. Okay, that's how we're going to play it. And that changes the energy of looking at your health.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What
Anyway,
if you don't like the game of hide and seek?
Okay, maybe you don't like hide and seek. So, well, again, remember I said the nature of this inquiry is you've got to be curious.
That's right. Yeah.
If someone is stuck in their I know,
yeah,
and this is it, that's okay. That's theirs.
Yeah.
But there's no curiousness there. If there's no curiousness, then you're not going to hear it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's okay too.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. No, that's I'm trying to think why I don't like hide and seek.
Does it feel scary when you find them?
I have a feeling that my brothers probably used to scare me.
That could be it.
On purpose.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. See, now I love hide and seek. I think it's incredibly funny. But you're right. That analogy wouldn't fly for everyone. They'd be like, wait, I really don't want to do that. That's terrible.
Exactly.
See, isn't that awesome? We all have
I'd rather just go down the hall and go to
right. Let's just go down the hall and look. I know. Yes, true. Very funny. Very funny.
But that's human nature, right? We all
yeah.
Things resonate with everybody differently. You have to find the one that works, right?
If you wouldn't mind me sharing, I think this is one of the things that shifted me from what I was doing to what I am doing is that because I had followed my curiosity from my science and said, oh, okay, so, science knows this much, but, it's also discovering. So it's also on the edge. And I started to see that in all of the ologies, immunology, physiology, embryology, I mean, there really was a miraculousness to it all. And the more I looked, I did an entire year's study of cellular biology. It's all I studied was cells.
Wow.
Which is fascinating because we have trillions of them. And that each one of them is a universe in and of itself.
Yeah.
So like we think, oh, the universe. And I'm like, the universe. Like we're it. we are the experience of the universe as well. Like it's in us. So that was my fascination, and which is why I couldn't go to like so much of the knowing. It had to be along a philosophy lines of, you know, health is happening through us. Healing occurs. It's an inside job. And so that's where chiropractic philosophy aligned for me.
Mm-hmm.
But what I even started to see further was that if beyond the, like if you think that this is the problem, your focus remains there.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to be able to broaden it, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I think there is something in that has been the bigger pull, to see that what science currently knows is just what science currently knows.
Yeah.
And that the inquiry takes you to places that things can appear, and we can become aware of something that we actually never knew. And that is the piece. It's a little bit more in the quantum realm, you know, that things are tethered, but you can't see it. It's bringing that invisible to visible. And I would say that that's what's felt to be the most helpful for people, is that once they saw that there was something beyond the box of their current issue, problem, challenge, is like that gave a whole new, like, it's like it all opened, and like, oh, there's a whole lot more to explore here, which is great. It's a freeing feeling. Yeah. Instead of trying to fight yourself out of a box.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And they've learned so much, I mean, about the inside, right?
Mm-hmm.
About the cells and how the cells work, and how they think, you know, really just like we do.
They totally do. They're communicating all the time.
Yeah.
And they can do it without chemical messengers. And that is true. Like people say, oh, that's quantum nonsense. And I'm like, it's not, because if you are actually frightened, your system is flooded with adrenaline immediately. Your brain won't even comprehend what has gone on, because it happens so immediately. There's no way that it can be lock and key. So the future of medicine, or I say the future of well-being, is really not in the biochemical realm, lock and key messenger signals. It's going to be from the quantum. It's more the biophysicist realm, like biologists and physicists are now working together. Like that's the level of where health is actually going. And that is so exciting. Yeah. Right. Because like we're all encapsulated. It's almost like a mother's intuition.
There you go.
You have it, right? You don't develop it. And there's times where I'm with my husband, and sometimes actually he spends a bit more time with my little guy parenting, because I'm sometimes busy in the evenings. And then I'll be with Jake, and all of a sudden it's like I just swoop in and do something, and he goes, how'd you know to do that? I'm like, it's just there. Right. But that's that piece as well, right? It's like he is intimately tied to me. Like his essence came through me in physical form. So, I mean, energetically, we're all attached, but you know, like there's a mother's intuition. I mean, how much closer could you get to another human besides actually having them grow inside you?
Yeah.
It's the wildest, coolest thing. So when you speak to, it's not just health. It's like, all of this stuff starts to relate to how you are in relationships, how you are in your career, you know, the expansiveness of, you know, your relationship with money. And money is just money. We just have so much emotion attached to it. But like, you know, right. It gets very sticky and heavy. But it'd be like, what if you could have some freedom around it? And that's what you speak to, right? With your audience. So I mean, that's huge.
Yeah. Oh no, exactly. Yeah. It's, again, it's very freeing. It's very freeing for a lot of people. You know, and I'm trying to think who I was listening to. Might have been Jamie, long time ago, and or not, I can't remember. But whoever it was saying that, well, you know, if you're doing something, if you're in a situation or whatever, and you don't like it, right?
Mhm.
And I know the whole thing in the Inside Out is about, you changed your thought, but the way you described it, which I think a lot of other people can kind of get more easily, is
Mhm.
that all if you think about your thought as a pair of sunglasses that you got on,
Mhm.
and it's like, I really don't like, it's got too much red in it or whatever, it's easy. Just take the sunglasses off and change them. Put a different pair on.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
But
it's
wouldn't you
a whole
say,
new way, huh?
totally, but
Yeah.
for the most part, have you not experienced this, that people don't experience their reality as thought? Until you see it
No.
as a thought, it actually looks real. It doesn't look changeable.
Right.
Yeah. And so the awareness of where, thinking is generated, and that is that immense place of like massive transformation, because once you see
Uh-huh.
it
Yeah.
as the mechanism of what's bringing forward your reality,
Mhm.
it feels like, no, it's something I have to work on.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
It's like, no,
oh,
you can just change it.
no. Yeah,
Just
yeah,
let it go.
yeah,
Get another
yeah.
one.
But yeah, and this is where you and I, before we even started recording, talked about
Mhm.
where some of the distinction starts to be, is when people become so hardly identified. Like if you think of ourselves as human beings, we're
Mhm.
so hard identified with mind body,
Mhm.
and then there's the being, there's the essence of us. But if you become hard identified with mind, whatever it's ticking up there and telling you, and your self concept and all of that, and body, there's no space to say, oh, let's just take the sunglasses off, because you're identified with it. But if you see that there's actually a space before that that could actually go, hold on, I'm wearing sunglasses, right? So there's
Mhm.
even that piece that allows you space to have an awareness
Uh-huh.
bigger than this is hard or this is how it is.
Right.
So,
Right. Or I
yeah,
screwed
because
up.
some people, yeah, well, some people just try to positivity themselves out of it. Well, I'll just think of positive thought, but then they're still stuck with the problem. And I'm like, well, that actually doesn't help either.
Right.
So yeah, there is a different view.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the challenge, what you and I are trying to bring to people in some ways, is we're trying to bring what's invisible visible.
That's true. Yeah. 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 And the other thing that goes along with that you and I were talking about as well before,
Mm-hmm.
is the whole past, present, and future.
Mm.
And so many of us live, part of the time in the past or all of the time in the past,
Mm-hmm.
be that good or bad,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're remembering bad things or good things. And
Mm-hmm. They're not actually living in the past, though.
that's,
They're remembering the past.
well, that's true. But because they carry it around with them all the time, they are living from that.
Oh, there's about, yeah. It's
Yeah.
living from it, not, you can't live in it.
Yes.
You actually
Right.
can't. You're actually here. Right.
Right. I know. I
Yeah.
understand. Yeah. I totally agree.
No, I wasn't really
totally agree.
correcting you.
Yeah.
It was more
No.
for the
No.
audience to get a
No.
distinction.
No. But I
Yeah.
appreciate you bringing that out.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
it's because it feels like you're living in the past.
Yeah. Oh, oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Right. Because
Yeah.
the thinking of the past brings up feelings of the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. But it
And
does feel
so
like it
it's,
is.
yeah. And, and like we were saying before, you can't control the future. The future's out there every minute. Always. Well, not always, but at a certain point. But
Yeah.
the
Well, it's
present
actually
is,
non-existent. Yeah.
that's right. Yeah. But the present is where we live.
Yeah.
And if our minds are always in the past or thinking about what might be in the future,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
then we're missing our lives. We're not living in our lives. And that's
Totally
a um, that includes having an awareness of everything in your life, including your body and including your health.
Mm-hmm. But you can see where some of the resistance, right? And it's good to use the word resistance, because resistance in the body is inflammation. And most people, this is just my observation, most people live in the future in their heads, and their bodies are in the past. Now it's not, because it's actually here.
Right. No,
but
I
if
get
your
it.
sense of self is coming from the past,
yes,
and you're busy in the future, the body is like, what, what, okay, well, like, what am I supposed to do? And it's confused. You can see the confusion. And then people are trying to solve the confusion by future problem solving. And I'm like, oh boy, like you can see why it becomes really messy.
Absolutely.
They're not here.
Yeah. And even more than just messy. It creates bad situations.
It totally does.
In the present that then become the past that you get involved in. It's like this little hamster wheel, right? That you just
So noticing that you're not actually here is one of the best. Gosh, if I was to use a tool, I don't use tools and strategies, but that is one thing I point people to, is that if you're up in your head, you're actually not here, because this present moment has a feeling to it, has a noticing, has a deeper sense of embodiment to it. And most people are not in their body.
Well, and the other thing that comes to mind for me that kind of has to do with it as well is the realization that actually what we're seeing happening outside of our bodies with our eyes and our mind isn't 100% true. And yet the way our whole society even has been built is that it's what you see that you believe. And what you're seeing isn't correct. I mean, literally isn't correct. That's why the police don't use eyewitness reports. They'll take video. They love to have video of crimes or whatever, but they don't want, eyewitnesses are notoriously incorrect.
Well, because all of our sensing occurs in our brain, right? And so I was trained in neurology from an outside-in model, which is very interesting, right? And so then to have this like epiphany of an aha, like, oh my gosh, it's not just our physiology that's going from an inside out healing model. It's literally our thinking is coming from inside out. It's not out there. I'm actually not seeing what I think I'm seeing. It's what I'm expecting to see is going on in front of me. And so because this brain is a predictive machine, as it starts to take in data, it starts to create maps. And the truth is we all have different maps. And so what someone sees and another person sees will be completely different. And there is actually, I mean, this starts to feel very quantum-like, but it's being proven in science that without, I mean, Nobel laureates have said it, without human beings having the internal sensing that we have, there would actually be no external world. Like it only exists because we are here experiencing it. But it is experience that you're pointing to, is that, it's your experience which that starts to lay the map. But most people don't know where their experience is coming from. They believe they're building a map from outside in, which then you have to manage the map. Whereas when you and I started to see it, it's like, oh my gosh, like, no, the map is actually an inside out thing. When I can see a space to lay a new map, the territory totally changes. It totally changes in an instant, which is what I speak to in physiology, right? I'm going to do a course on autoimmunity, and I'm going to take people upstream about the map. Like the map they currently have can only be navigated a certain way. But if I actually have them consider, look down the hall, go to the right, and dissolve the map, what newly shows up for them, that's an access to changing what happens moment to moment going forward for them.
Yeah.
Dropping the past, just like what you said, don't carry it around with you. You're actually going to take what you know about your illness, whatever it is, and you're going to just set it down.
Yeah.
That's not going away. You can pick it back up. I don't tell people they can never pick it back up.
Yeah.
But what if you just set it down?
Right.
And first off, they feel relieved. They're like, oh God, how would that feel? I'm like, oh, it feels awesome, doesn't it? And and then the second part is, okay, in the nothingness, what exists? And they're all like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we pick it back up again because we're like that. We like to know, right? But it's okay. It's a fun game to play for a while.
Well, but the neat thing is that they've had that experience and they know that that's there.
Totally. They get a glimpse.
That's right. And they can go back to it whenever they want. And they'll start doing it more and more.
Yeah. And that's the muscle you and I were talking about, noticing, right? Noticing is the muscle. So until you have an awareness that you even have the sunglasses on,
right,
nothing can really change. So if we get you behind that, whereas I talk about it sometimes like a silent witness, because we can be aware of our thinking. Like humans have this amazing ability. That's what has made us in kind of higher order and species, is that we can be aware of our thinking. That's incredible. Like that is incredible. That's consciousness. We have consciousness. My dog does not have consciousness. It's kind of aware of its current moment. That's it. Like it doesn't have this whole ability. And so, but that area can also get very confusing for people and it makes them feel very heavy and tight. And so it's like, what if we get a new view of that? So I love the realm I'm playing it. Yeah.
Well, that sounds like actually maybe a good place to kind of wrap up. We've kind of built and gotten to that place.
Perfect. Well, I really appreciate, like, I'm always grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be in these conversations, first off, because these conversations are mind expanding and they're just so enlivening to my soul. So thank you for inviting me on.
Well, thank you for being here. It's been, I've definitely enjoyed it for sure.
Great.
So, and if people want to reach out to you, if you have a website or
I do have a website. I wouldn't say it's,
let me put it this way. Is there some place you would like them to be able to get in touch with you?
I think, well, at this point, I'd say where I am on the journey, Facebook is probably the easiest. And so I'm at Kari Klein, Kari, and then Klein, Klein, in Facebook. Sometimes it goes This Life, Kari Klein is like the little trailer. So I should be there on Facebook. And that's got a little bit more of me, just to get a sense of me and what I'm up to. And then I've also created a Facebook group. My website has interesting things. I just haven't put on kind of my newer where I'm headed, because it was a little bit more as I was doing both chiropractic and and then I'm on Instagram at the handle.
Well, why don't you, I will put both of those in the show notes, and then people can get a hold of you, whatever works best for them.
Fun.
So
thank you.
Okay, well, let me do my little ending here, which is that I am not a doctor, and this should not be considered to be medical advice, even though Kari is a licensed chiropractor.
Well, no, I'm unlicensed. Remember.
Oh, you're unlicensed. Oh, my goodness. Okay.
I'm non-practicing now.
Oh my God. Okay. Okay. So neither of us are giving medical advice.
None of us.
And if you have any sort of medical issues, please go and see your own doctor. And if you're having an emergency, definitely go to the emergency room. So that, I think, is it for today. And I will see all of you next week.
Bye. Thank you.